The stolen Euclidean submarine is still racing for Los Angeles. Hour after hour, the powerful explosions of compressed gas have driven the speedy boat on toward its goal. It is now noon, and a blazing summer sun is beating down on the waters of the Pacific Ocean. The submarine is very near the surface of the water, and in the control section, Captain Bradford, Mrs. Gregory, Jerry, and Joan are discussing a shadow on the water directly above them.
I don't like the looks of that shadow.
The shadow is harmless.
Sure, but what's making the shadow?
Looks to me like a good-sized plane, and a plane flying not any too high.
That is precisely what casts the shadow.
One of the Euclidean planes?
Undoubtedly. That is one of the planes from the island, and the pilot is very carefully keeping his shadow directly over us at all times.
Oh, then maybe that shadow can hurt us.
Now, Jerry, you've been around that magic island so long, you're imagining things.
Well, what's that shadow doing there, then, if it's not for our benefit?
The shadow is probably kept over us for a definite reason. The pilot of the Euclidean plane knows that while we are conscious of his proximity, we are less likely to attempt communication with the shore.
But we'll have to communicate with the shore in a few hours now, won't we?
It is quite possible we will attempt to land without any communication to the shore.
But, Joan, we've told you that it's out of the question. You simply can't land a strange submarine, particularly one carrying as many unique weapons as this one, without getting yourself thoroughly put in jail.
And they'll do it, too. I think we ought to let them know we're coming.
Well, I don't. We'd never get anything accomplished if the waterfront found out what was going on.
We are now passing Point Loma.
Point Loma? Just off San Diego?
So soon, Joan?
We are making good speed, Captain Bradford. We will reach Los Angeles Harbor in slightly more than 2 hours.
Gee whiz. Point Loma. I wish the Coast Guard over there in San Diego knew what was going on. Boy, what they wouldn't do to that plane over us.
The thought makes it seem almost worthwhile to try letting them know we're out here.
Too risky, Pat. Though it would seem mighty good to know those Coast Guard boys were rolling that big plane of theirs down the ramp.
I think it would be foolish. We must proceed to Los Angeles at once.
Couldn't we go up on the surface, just long enough to open the observation hatch and take a look at the shoreline?
Homesick, Jerry?
Well, maybe I am. A little.
What is homesick?
Don't you feel homesick for the Magic Island, Joan?
I do not know what homesick is, so I cannot tell whether I feel it or not. But I do not feel at all ill, so I presume I do not feel homesick.
Gee, that's funny. She don't even know what homesick is.
I'm not sure that it's very funny, Jerry. Think of not having any place you cared enough for to be homesick.
Gosh, that wouldn't be so good.
What is homesick?
Homesickness, my dear, is the lost, lonesome feeling a person gets when he's been too long away from his home and his loved ones.
Then why should I be homesick? I like very much to be here with all of you, and you have told me that my home is with you, Mother. How can I be homesick when I am going toward my home?
Well, that's a good way to figure it, Joan. But I'm afraid most of us would have a little more trouble than that trying to talk ourselves out of a spell of homesickness.
Well, it won't be long now. We'll soon be outside harbor at Los Angeles.
And that will mean we'll soon be in great danger.
I agree with you, Pat. I think it's time we made our plans.
We are in danger now, constant danger, and planning is useless until we are familiar with conditions at Los Angeles.
Hey,
What is it, Jerry?
I just thought of something.
Something important to this landing of ours?
I think it is.
Then let us hear it.
That Euclidean plane flying around up there.
He's not going to do anything to us.
Maybe not, but there's something mighty mysterious about that plane.
Well, in what way, Jerry?
Well, how does he get by with flying along at that altitude? He can't be more than 1,000 feet above the water. You know, plenty of people can see him from land, and they can tell that it isn't no ordinary plane. Not only that, but we've passed under 2 big squadrons of Navy planes, and they couldn't help but see him.
Why, you're right, Jerry. And surely anyone flying near that plane and seeing how it was made would be curious about it.
I think the plane has not been seen.
Why, it must have been seen, Joan. Jerry's given you good reasons why it couldn't miss being seen.
The plane is probably invisible.
Invisible?
Now, Joan, your voice was as loud as any other in telling us that there isn't any magic on Euclidia. And an invisible plane sounds like magic to me.
Me, too.
You found the magic island invisible, didn't you?
Huh?
Well, yes, we did. That is, it was invisible to our eyes, simply because it was surrounded with that bank of artificial fog.
Exactly. And if we were on the surface, we could look up and see a large gray cloud flying steadily along over us.
That Euclidean plane is hidden in a cloud, an artificial cloud generated by the plane and thrown out around it?
Precisely.
Every time I learn one more of the things those Euclideans can do, I wonder a little more just how we're going to come out when we really mix with them.
Well, it won't be easy, Jerry.
I'll say it won't.
But even though the plane is invisible for all practical purposes, it does cast a shadow. Surely someone must have seen shadow on the water?
If it was seen from another plane, the pilot might think it was the shadow from his own. And a boat would not notice it unless the shadow passed directly over the boat. We know the shadow has not done that, for we have not passed directly under a boat.
Then, barring some unusual and unlikely accident, that plane will have no trouble following us right into the harbor.
It looks that way, Pat.
Boy, there'd sure be something doing inside that plane if another pilot took a notion to fly through there.
That would be unfortunate.
At least that, my dear.
I think we'd better stop speculating as to what might happen to somebody else if they flew into a cloud and start figuring what's liable to happen to us when we get into port.
Well, we can't figure anything until we get there, can we?
That is correct, Jerry. Planning would be useless without knowledge of local conditions at our destination.
But how are we going to land, Joan?
I have told you, Mother. We will use individual airlocks and leave the submarine anchored at the 10-fathom level.
We're going to unload from this barge 60 feet below the water level and walk into the harbor?
That is the general idea.
It don't sound any too good to me.
Well, Joan must know what she's talking about, Jerry, or she wouldn't suggest such a thing.
Well, I haven't heard enough of the story to make it sound right.
You have given me little opportunity of telling you anything.
But what about all the hours we just sat here and hung on while we plowed up most of the Pacific Ocean?
Well, Joan has been mighty busy all the time, Jerry. Don't forget that she's the only one who really understands this submarine. And we've been depending on her for all our navigation.
Well, I know that. But she means I talk too much.
Do you not?
Well, maybe I do.
Don't feel badly about it, Jerry. We all talk too much at times. And I agree with you that now is the time to make what decisions we can about our landing at home.
Joan is absolutely right when she says that we must leave the sub submerged, safely beyond the harbor, and safely below any possible accidental discovery from the surface.
Correct, Captain.
And as I understand it, you know exactly how to get us safely from that submarine to the surface of the water and then into the harbor?
I will see that we float safely on the surface of the water. You will be responsible for our landing in the harbor.
I knew there was a catch in this somewhere.
Now, Jerry.
Oh, sorry.
Joan, dear, do you realize that we will probably be anchored out too far to swim in comfortably? And that there's no way to arrange for anyone to meet us unless we send them a radio message.
We may have to use the radio as a last resort.
And that will let the Euclideans know exactly where we've anchored this sub.
Well, what do we care if they get the boat? Just so we get out of it first.
I'd like to be able to dry dock this boat, let our Navy men take it apart. They might learn a lot of things that the governments of the world should know.
I think we will be able to lay our plans when the time comes. For the moment, I have a far greater problem facing me.
What's that?
This submarine is no longer swaying around. The stern is perfectly stable.
I noticed that.
So did I, but I thought it was purely accidental. I like it. Is there more to it, Joan?
I believe there is. We are being held on our course.
Held on our course. From some outside source of power?
It would appear so.
But what kind of power could do that?
I fear I know the answer.
You fear you know the answer.
Yes, Mother. But I will withhold it until I am certain.
Well, now, look here, Joan. We're not children, any of us. If you know something we will have to find out eventually, why not tell us now? Perhaps we can help you work it out.
Sure. Everything that's happened to us so far has come out all right.
I think the men are right, dear. What is it?
We are rapidly losing our forward speed.
We're slowing up?
Observe the speed as indicated on the instrument.
Well, it seems that we're only making 35 knots now, and the needle is gradually dropping off.
Precisely.
Are we running out of fuel, Joan?
Definitely no.
Then what's holding us back?
You have hit it very accurately, Jerry. We are being held back.
But that doesn't make sense, Joan. What could hold this submarine back?
Magnetism?
Magnetism. That sounds like another trick of the Euclideans.
Without doubt, it is the work of G47 and his scientists.
But how could they reach us?
Joan, look. That speed indicator has fallen off to 30 knots.
It will not fall below that speed, I think.
You seem quite certain what is taking place, Joan.
I am almost sure. One moment more, and I will know.
One moment. Is something going to happen to us?
Nothing more than is happening now. Captain Bradford, you are a navigator. Will you look at my compass?
Why, sure, Joan, but what... Oh.
Huh? What'd you see, Tex?
This compass is pointing due south, and we're running due north. Every instrument on this board is paralyzed, and every needle that is near enough the horizontal to swing free is pointing south.
Then the Euclideans are using magnetism on us. They're sending out magnetic beams from that island to hold us back.
I don't believe it. Even on the Magic Island, they haven't got strong enough magnetic powers for that. Oh, maybe they could pull the compass around, but they sure couldn't hold the submarine back.
Correct, Jerry. It is not being done from the island, but it is the work of the Euclideans.
From that Euclidean plane flying over it?
No, Pat. Wait a minute. I think I've got it. There's the Euclidean, submarine right behind us.
Oh, no, Peg.
Yes, Mother.
Oh, but how? You must be wrong, Joan. You said this was the fastest sub on the island.
Yes, but do not forget that we lay at the bottom of the ocean, practically motionless for hours.
You're right. And every time we had to dive to get away from those bombs, every time we had to submerge to keep out of trouble, there was a sub gaining on us all the time.
Gee, one of those Euclideans plowing along our course, just waiting for a chance to catch up with us.
But how could they have been so sure of our course?
That is one occasion where the very perfection of Euclidean machinery has betrayed us. Any Euclidean submarine commander would know that we would be navigating with the automatic devices, and that our course would be the regular Euclidean course to Los Angeles. He could not fail to follow us.
And now, there's one of those submarines practically on top of us.
He must be pretty close, isn't he, Joan?
Within a mile, or his magnets would not hold us back.
Well, what are our chances?
To outrun that submarine, we have no chance. But he will never shorten the distance between us.
Well, that's all right here. But when we get to Los Angeles, what then?
Yes, Joan. What then? We can't possibly get out of this submarine and escape during the few minutes it will take him to catch up with us after we stop.
Well, I don't see what we can do about it. It's up to you, Joan.
I see no more chance of escaping that submarine than you do. That is, if we attempt to stop at Los Angeles.
Attempt to stop? Joan, we must stop there.
Then that other Euclidean submarine will stop with us. And what will happen then, I am afraid to say.
The Euclidean submarine carrying Mrs. Gregory, Tex Bradford, Jerry, and Joan is within 100 miles of Los Angeles. Less than 100 miles from home, and a new danger threatens them. They are losing speed. Joan has figured out that another submarine directly behind them is holding them back with magnets. This makes the end of their journey more hopeless than the beginning, as it would certainly be too bad if the Euclideans captured Mrs. Gregory and her party so near home. Jerry and Joan, the captain, and Mrs. Gregory are in the central control section of the submarine, watching the speed indicator.
Well, I guess you're right, Joan. We can't make over 30 knots anymore.
I know I am right.
But are you sure it's another submarine that's holding us back, Joan?
Well, we're certainly being held back. I don't know what else it could be.
It is another Euclidean submarine. And as all other boats are much slower than this one, it must be well commanded.
Hey, Joan, our girlfriend.
Girlfriend?
Yeah, you know, that Euclidean girl submarine commander.
I think not.
But it might be, dear. You said she was the finest submarine commander on the Magic Islands.
Yes, and they'd send their best out on a job like this, wouldn't they?
Yes, except for the fact that the commander who befriended us may be under suspicion.
You mean suspicion of having helped us?
Exactly.
Gee, I'm sorry for her if old G-47 got any idea she'd try to help us a little.
Is there any way of finding out who is in command of that submarine?
Only radio communication, Mother, and it would do us no good.
No, nothing to be gained there. Unless we could find out how many of their scientists are on board.
You mean so we could have a better idea of what we're going to be up against when we get to Los Angeles?
Well, something like that, Jerry. I thought I might get an idea as to what they're most likely to do if I could find out who's on that boat.
That would make very little, if any, difference. The Euclideans are so well versed in all sciences that any of them could perform what tasks might be necessary to interfere with our landing.
And now, with that submarine so near at hand, we're not at all sure of landing.
We will land, but it will not be as simple a process as I had thought.
I don't see any chance of landing at all.
I'll bet we can figure out some way, Jerry. We haven't come over 4,000 miles in this submarine to give up that easy when we get to the end of our trip.
I don't see any hope of doing anything.
We will think of some plan before we approach the harbor.
But those men, or whoever is back there in that other submarine, aren't just sitting around idly. They're planning, too.
Naturally. But we have an advantage over them.
I can't see it.
We may plan to do as we please, and may execute our plans on the spur of the moment. Our pursuers will find it necessary to forestall our plans, and that is most difficult.
You're right there, Joan. It's always a lot easier to think when your whole job is getting away from something than when you have to figure what the other fellow's going to do and stop you.
But if that submarine behind us can follow us right into the harbor by simply hanging onto us with magnets, we haven't even room for a plan.
You must not be too sure of that, Mother.
Isn't there some way we can lose that guy back there?
Not as long as his current holds out.
I have one possible way to halt the progress of that boat, but I do not want to use it except as a last resort.
It seems to me that we're not far from a last resort.
Yeah, and if you know any way to get rid of that fella, this looks like a swell time to do it.
I do not think the emergency is great enough.
Well, you know best about this equipment, Joan. But I'd say we didn't have any great amount of time to waste.
We're nearly to Los Angeles, Joan. We'll have to act very rapidly to get away from that boat with any margin of safety.
That is true, but it might be very dangerous to lose them too quickly.
I don't see why. If you're trying to get away from somebody, the sooner the better.
What if you escaped from them early enough to afford them the opportunity of making additional plans to recapture you?
Huh?
You mean that if we succeeded in losing our pursuers now, it would only give them another chance to catch us?
Precisely.
Well, I can understand that all right. Your idea is correct, Joan, providing we can stop them at the proper time.
That is, of course, our problem.
What do you propose to do, Joan?
Use our magnetic bombs on that other submarine and hold it motionless for a period of time sufficient to allow us to escape from this boat to the surface.
Magnetic bombs?
The same kind of bombs the Euclidean plane dropped on us?
Exactly the same type of bomb.
But, Joan, do we have any of those bombs?
To be sure, Mother. I have told you this submarine is fully equipped.
Well, I certainly don't see anything that looks like a supply of bombs.
Oh, never mind, Tex. They're probably just a lot of little pills like those big dinners we've been eating.
How large are those magnetic bombs, Joan?
Approximately 1 cubic inch.
1 inch?
Gee whiz. A bomb 1 inch square will hold a submarine still in the water?
If the bomb is placed near enough to the boat, certainly.
Golly, where are those things?
I will show you when the time comes to use them.
And how will we know when that time has come, dear?
Yes, Joan, we'd better know exactly what your plan is. And if, while we have to act quickly, we won't be in the dark as to what we're supposed to be doing.
That submarine will not gain on us. They must remain at a distance of approximately 1 mile. That will give us ample protection when we enter the harbor.
You're going to wait till we get into the harbor to turn those bombs loose?
That might be dangerous to other shipping, Joan. We don't want to excite a lot of suspicion as to our movement.
In that event, we will release our bombs at an appointed place outside the harbor. That other submarine will be held powerless at that point for a sufficient length of time to permit us to escape.
I think you're right, Joan. The longer we wait, the more chance we'll have of holding that boat powerless at the time. Our safety will depend on the fact that it is powerless.
I guess that part of it's all right. But how about the men on the other boat having a little sense of their own?
What do you mean, Jerry?
Well, those fellows back there in that other boat aren't asleep. They'll soon figure out what we're going to do.
Naturally, they will.
All right, then. What's going to stop them?
Stop them? What do you refer to?
Well, they've got some of those magnetic bombs, haven't they?
Naturally.
Then why can't they hold our boat powerless? Just as easy as we can hold theirs.
I wanted to ask that same thing, Jerry, but the rest of you have left me so far behind in all these technicalities that I was ashamed to ask.
Well, you needn't be, Pat. I can't see it any better than Jerry does. Those bombs will work both ways, won't they?
To be sure, the action of the bombs is identical from either ship. But the fact that those bombs are magnetic, that their contact is strongly magnetic, is our best protection.
Well, I still don't see it.
That other submarine is now sending out a magnetic beam, which is retarding our speed and allowing them to cling to our course. That is understood?
Oh, sure, we know that.
It's the action of the bombs that puzzles us, Joan.
The action of the bombs, as bombs, has nothing to do with this. They are merely small cubes of a highly compressed substance which will form a powerful magnetic field when released in salt water. But those bombs cannot be fired through the water for any appreciable distance.
Oh, now I'm beginning to get it. They couldn't possibly shoot those bombs far enough ahead to catch us. But we could drop them on our course for the other boat to run into.
Gee, that's simple, isn't it?
Most things are very simple, Jerry, after we understand them.
That is not all. Once we release a bomb, their magnetic beam will pull it directly to them at a terrific speed, and they will be held motionless almost instantly.
Well, you're right. That beam would pull the bomb to them. And more than that, it would prevent them sending a bomb after us.
Then let's turn one of those bombs loose right now.
No, Jerry.
Why not, Joan? We're getting closer to Los Angeles all the time. I should think our best move would be to lose that other submarine as soon as possible.
It would seem so, Mother, but for one thing.
Well, what's that?
The effects of the bomb would hardly last until we reach the harbor.
Oh, and that sub could take right out after us again, huh?
That's it, son, and Joan's right. The thing to do is to wait until we're nearly ready to anchor. Then release one of the bombs. And the magnetism is sure to hold the other boat powerless long enough to give us a chance to land.
Precisely, Captain Bradford.
Well, I can understand that all right. But it seems as if we're taking the enemy dangerously near to our camp.
Well, I guess that's about the best thing to do, though, Mrs. Gregory. At least we're going to be sure where he is if we've got him pinned down the water with one of those bombs.
Yes, in the meantime, though, we'd better be making some plans to get out of our own submarine and safely onto the land.
What would you suggest, Joan?
I think the captain should take charge of that. You are all more familiar with your resources than I am.
You're right, Joan. It's up to us on this end. We sure used you enough on that island.
Well, we'll get ashore if Joan knows how to get to the surface from this thing.
I will attend to that.
Well, what can you do about landing us, Tex?
Well, I don't know yet. Joan, is there any objection to our using the radio now?
I think we could do no harm by using it, though the submarine following us will receive all messages we send.
But can we use it with that magnetic beam hanging onto us?
Transmission will be difficult.
We'll have to try it. There's no other way we can reach Johnson.
Well, what can we tell Johnson after we do reach him? You said you didn't want the story about this sub and the one following us to get nosed around yet.
I think I can do it with a code message.
Remember, Captain Bradford, that it will be dangerous to state a meeting place with Johnson. Your arrangements will undoubtedly be overheard by the other submarine and by Thales or some other Euclidean agent on the mainland.
Tex, how about one of our old courses? The airline charts we made when we were training pigeons and testing directional radio beams.
Just what I had in mind, Pat.
You mean Johnson knows those courses so well, you wouldn't have to give out any information to tell him where to meet us?
Right, Jerry.
That would be the solution to our problem.
How far out do you think we should anchor, John?
At least 5 miles.
Boy, that's a long swim.
We're not going to swim, and you know it, Jerry.
Oh, I hope not. But maybe there's something I thought of the rest of you forgot all about.
What's that, son?
Well, we're going to have to toss magnetic bombs around outside the harbor to hold this other boat still, aren't we?
I know of no other way to ensure our safety.
Then it looks to me like we're going to get caught by that same magnetism when a rescue boat comes out to meet us.
Tex, Jerry's right.
That had occurred to me.
It occurred to me, too, and I think I know the answer.
What, Tex?
We'll tell Johnson to bring out a sailboat and to leave everything metallic off of it.
Is it possible to get that information to Mr. Johnson without informing the scientists in the other submarine of your plan?
We'll have to try it, Joan. We haven't many choices left.
Hey, Joan, is it all right to use the radio now?
I will make the necessary adjustments and use a narrow directional beam. If your code is difficult enough, Captain, we may have a period of comparative safety while the Euclideans decipher it, though they are masters of that art also.
Those guys didn't miss a thing, did they?
Well, this code is really so simple that it isn't a code at all, just a prearranged set of signals. I doubt if anyone could ever figure them out.
That is well.
Is the radio ready now, Joan?
The transmission beam is set on 3 meters. You may proceed.
J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C.
I hope we can raise Johnson quickly.
Oh, he might be taking time out for something to eat.
I would not be too impatient about your arrangements.
Why not?
It is daylight now. We may find it advisable to cruise outside the harbor until after dark.
By George, Joan, you're right. It would be a lot more simple for Johnson to pick us up safely after dark.
But if we cruise around waiting for darkness, what is to prevent that other submarine sending radio messages to Thales and interfering with our plans?
Yeah. Say, that wouldn't be so good.
They will not be able to use their radio from the other boat and hold us with their magnetic beam at the same time. It is possible for them to receive, but not to transmit messages.
Good. We'll get out of this yet. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. Say, Joan, were we discussing our plans with this microphone open?
No, Captain. I have kept it closed except for your actual signals to Johnson.
You sure think of everything, Joan. Now, everybody keep quiet, and I'll settle down to a long session of trying to raise Johnson. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. J24...